Just coming through.
All right, so we'll get, it's 6:30 by my clock, so we'll get started. Welcome to the planning board meeting for November 2, 2022. We'll start with the alphabetical roll call of who's here. Mark,
Mark Brewer here.
Tom Callahan here.
Amy Glassmeyer here.
Kevin Hine present.
I'm sure Deirdre will join us. Is Angela with us tonight? Also is Laura Lind, our town planner. Is Angela out there taking attendance or minutes?
She will be. She's having trouble getting in, but I'm helping her.
Okay, and I see Deirdre's in the attendee list.
Thank you.
So, all right. So, why don't you?
Oh, sorry. Never mind.
Go ahead. Attorney Watsky's not here yet? I was told he was coming.
I don't see Attorney Watsky yet,
All
but
right, well, we'll give him a few minutes and we'll go out of order with what we're doing here tonight. So, and Deirdre Hobson is here. Welcome, Deirdre. I knew you couldn't miss the fun. So, all right, so we'll start then with 534 Beechwood Street and 32 Dome Street. We just have a draft decision to go over and vote to approve. Has everybody had a chance to look at it?
Tom, I only sent it to you actually.
Oh.
I can live share it tonight.
All right, if you want to put it up on the screen, and it's not very long, so I think we can get through it fairly quickly.
Yes.
Oh, Chris Plex is out there too. He's got his hand raised. Let's bring him in. There he is. Good. We have Chris Plex with us tonight as well. Welcome, Chris. All right, so do you have the, can you bring the draft up or shall I do it? Or?
Yes, no, sorry. I had been in a different window trying to help Angela access the meeting, so I just had to backtrack. So thanks for your patience.
right.
It's opening now.
That's
Hold on.
okay. Great.
So I'm just having trouble opening the document. Tom, you might want to move on to the next item. Attorney Watsky's not here, but the rest of the team is.
All right. All right. We are just, let me just, hold on one sec. All right, let me get back here, share screen. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, there's the draft decision that we want to do. All right, so now let me minimize my screen. Let's go a page down. The beginning of it is the usual where the vote is, the information about the project. Just go right to the findings. The findings, we just have two basic findings here: that a land alteration special permit was not needed, and then that the project is consistent with the rules of site plan review, and it goes through the 6 factors of site plan review. Everybody take a look at that. Does anything jump out at anybody? I didn't see anything that was problematic with that. ultimately on number 6, we are making the decision that vehicular and pedestrian traffic is safe and convenient at the moment, but there is a condition further on here about the future, and whether that might change. Anybody with any comment on the findings?
Not yet.
Okay. Anyone, or should we move on?
Yeah, you can move on.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you, Clark. So the conditions, there's only 3 here. I didn't think this was a project that had a lot of conditions, but the first is a fairly standard one about obtaining the necessary permits from other town boards and committees, and if there's any alteration, to come back to the board, determine whether a modification is needed. The decision has to be kept on site. And then the third one was the one we discussed quite a bit at the end of the hearing about a future traffic study, since this is a completely new use for the site, within 24 months of the issuance of certificates of occupancy. So that is a mandatory requirement. It says shall. So it is something that we will then revisit in 24 months to see if any further modifications to the plan is required. Were there any other conditions that anybody recalls from the meeting that they'd like to see and hear? Again, I think the rest of the project was fairly straightforward.
Right.
So I'll just go around. I'll start with Amy tonight, and then we'll just go through the board. Is there any other specific conditions that you'd like to see?
I just want to make sure that the language of the item 3 represents the understanding of the applicant. And what I mean is, it says applicant shall submit to the building department a status report on traffic patterns following 24 months of issuance of certificates of occupancy. Is that sufficiently clear to indicate that they will be able to operate for 24 months prior to them coming back to make any comment to us? I would think as an applicant, I would like to know that I had, it could take them 3 years to do their project. So how do we create this on a contingent basis?
Well, that's why it's tied to the certificates of occupancy. So if they, take their time in doing the construction of this project, nothing that's going to generate traffic other than during the period of construction is going to occur until they have occupancy. So it's sufficiently clear to me, but if it needs some clarity, feel free to suggest it. But that's the trigger, the start period for this 24 months of review is the issuance of the occupancy permits.
I might add, if this is a mixed use project, which my understanding is it is mixed use for purpose of residency in part of the building,
Mhm.
and also for the operation of a business. The concern was raised with regard to the traffic patterns that would flow in and out of this site during the course of normal business. My concern with the way things are written is 24 months after issuance of certificates of occupancy. If the place is receives a certificate of occupancy for a residence, that does not that's not going to look at the need for this as envisioned based on 24 months of review of operation of the business establishment.
Lauren, rather than me editing here, if you just make a note about this, say the issuance of certificates of occupancy for the commercial uses. Does that address that, Kevin? I think that's what you were getting at, that the real traffic, the
Yeah, that's
traffic
exactly.
generators are the commercial uses, not the residential use.
Well, that's exactly it. And just, I'd like someone can point out too, you get a certificate of occupancy, say in month 1, and then 24 months go by and you're still not performing it as a business. I don't want that to become a loophole. And we know there's projects that have the go ahead in this town that have gone and dragged on for periods of time along the amount of months we're talking about. Now, if the certificate of occupancy means you have to occupy it and start that business for it to come into effect within a certain amount of time after it's issued, then I'm okay if that's the clarification, the way it's written, but I don't want a certificate of occupancy for a business and then find out 24 months later, traffic looks good, and there's no basis upon which it's a real-time basis upon which we have data to see how it's operated over any amount of time, 24 months or even some fraction of.
Okay. I mean, yeah, the issuance of the certificate of occupancy just gives you the right to occupy. It doesn't mean there might be actual occupancy. They might have a delay in getting a tenant if they're leasing this out. And there is a possibility that the certificate of occupancy can be issued and then they have less than 24 months of data for actual use, but they'll still be triggered at month 24 of generating some sort of report, and then the building inspector and this board is going to have to evaluate what to do with that data. But if we qualify it, that certificate of occupancies for the commercial uses only, that means the apartment could be used and go on for quite some time and be the only use there, and there won't be any requirement to update on traffic patterns. But I don't think that's, again, where our concern is of what's going to generate traffic.
Well, and I think something needs to be added, that certificate of occupancy for the business portion of this permit and a set amount of time for continuous operation of the business prior to review by this board of traffic flow patterns over that period of time.
Okay, so let me put this in another color so I can see it. So you're also saying that, I mean, the idea, I don't know, is the idea to push off of them having to report until they have meaningful data, or to keep the 24-month trigger no matter what data they have?
I'd rather see something meaningful, and I'm sure the applicant would as well, based on seasonal fluctuations in their business, based on the fact that most businesses after 12 months of operation may not be in operation thereafter. I think 24 months of continuous or near continuous operation of the establishment after certificate of occupancy is reasonable.
Well, how about this? To keep the 24-month window so we're not going off ad nauseum into the future, would this look okay? That they have at least 18 months of actual use data?
Occupancy and business use.
Okay. Does that look good to everybody?
Yeah, I was gonna make a comment on the first line, the status report, and
Yep.
then following 24 months. It seems like applicant and the building department, should he submit a report on vehicle and pedestrian traffic patterns? A report to the planning board? Why is it to the building department?
I hear you.
to the building department and the planning board a report
Oops,
on,
wait a minute. I gotta change my font color again. Sorry.
no worries.
I should just be using the edit function. What's that?
Yes, and should we get rid of the word status? It would be a report on that, and instead of following, should it be after 24 months of issuance? I think that's a little clearer.
Okay, yep.
Along with Kevin's additional language.
Okay, good. All right. Well, we've jumped around. Anybody else have any other comments on this or on this particular one? Okay, I'll save this, Lauren, and I'll get it to you tomorrow. Any other thoughts, comments on conditions? I personally didn't think there were any more that would be necessary, but
Tom,
anybody else?
I'd
Yeah,
like, if it was to come to be that there was a traffic study that needed to be done,
Mhm.
I think it's relevant for us to say, upon the determination of this 18-month period of actual occupancy and use of commercial spaces, there is a need identified for a traffic study. That traffic study should commence within the next 30 days.
okay. I mean, we could decide that at the time or we can decide that now.
We are going to forget, so I think it's better to just write it down.
And I guess adding who is responsible for, just being clear that it would be the building occupant, the building applicant in this case, to prepare and submit that report.
Yeah, well, the applicant, I'm not actually what this should probably say up here is. Okay. It's possible, like One Pleasant Street, that who we are giving the permit to may sell the property between now and then. So
Right.
that's what I want to say, the successor, and it's whoever's going to own the property at the time that the burden's going to go on. So, all right. Anything else from anyone?
Not me.
All right, then I'll entertain a motion to approve this decision
So moved.
as edited.
Second,
All right, roll call alphabetical.
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Amy Glassmeyer, aye.
Kevin Heine, aye.
Deirdre Hobson, I.
Plex, aye.
Okay, I gotta just find a place to save that. I'll do that later. Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, so that's taken care of. What do we have over on attendees? Matt Watsky is here, so if you wouldn't mind promoting Matt Watsky, we do not have to promote their whole team. So our next item is 94 Black Horse Lane, where we have a continued common driveway application. And just to bring everybody up to speed, so we have continued this matter a couple of times. There was a request being made to continue it once again this evening. I don't know how many of you saw Matt's email regarding that. But if I can, I'll just read it quickly. First, regarding the common driveway application, as the board is aware, subsequent to our filing, we have filed building permits with the building inspector for seeking approval for construction of 3 houses on each of the 3 existing vacant lots that are entitled to the single lot exemption under zoning. We are waiting the building inspector's ruling on those applications. If those permits are approved, we would not go forward with the pending common driveway application. We request therefore to continue the common driveway meeting to the board's December meeting, by which time we anticipate having the building inspector's ruling on the permits. Second, with regard to the previously filed preliminary subdivision application, we filed it primarily to have the benefit of the zoning freeze that comes from a preliminary followed by a definitive plan. You, meaning Lauren, had written to Carmen on October 31st that the board had closed its hearing on the proposed modifications of the common driveway rules with no pending amendments to the zoning bylaw and no pending amendments to rules and regulations. We have no need to further pursue the definitive subdivision and will not be filing that plan at this time. So we have that request under that email for another continuation. I know that town council has spoken to Attorney Watsky today. I've spoken to town council, and you know, in the end of the day, we all know that town council has issued an opinion regarding the issue of the single lot exemption and regarding whether any of these lots, even if subject to a building permit, can be subject to a common driveway. So, you know, the advice I was given was, you know, we shouldn't continue this because we're tired of this being continued down the road. But ultimately, even if building permits are issued, and nobody knows what's going to happen there at this point, how are these projects going to be built? Maybe you can answer that, Matt, but you know, our council's opinion is that our hands are kind of tied, that we cannot approve any use of a common driveway with respect to this project. There's obviously a disagreement of legal opinions on what your rights are here, but you know, we're bound by, you know, we're bound or guided by our opinion of town council. And so, you know, the question is, you know, do we continue the common driveway to, I think, what might be an inevitable finding that we have no choice but to deny it, or what's going on? If you were to get building permits, how do you plan to access these properties, I guess is the question.
Okay, well, if we get the building permits,
Yeah.
we will access the properties the way they were intended to be accessed when they were created back in the 1930s, which is via the easements that run to these properties, and it would not be under a common driveway permit. It would use the existing right of way that the planning board not that long ago issued A&R approvals for lots fronting on it, and then have driveways coming off of that, neither of which would serve 3 or more houses. They would only serve 1 house or 2 houses at most, so they would not be common driveways by definition. But that will be, you know, the access, and whether that is a legal access is a zoning issue that is presented to the building inspector for him to rule on as part of our building permit applications to him.
Well, I mean, you're aware that our town council's opinion also questions your entitlement to use these lots under the single lot exemption.
No, she didn't actually. She in fact actually agreed with me that the 3 vacant lots in question are eligible for the single lot exemption. The only one that she questioned was the one that has a house on it already and that had additional land added to it. And that lot, which is the one at 94 Black Horse, the single lot exemption is irrelevant to that one because it has a house on it. A single lot exemption is only applicable to vacant lots. So that house was never going to be part of a common driveway application. It already has a house and access.
All right, well, to the board, town council couldn't be here tonight because of a conflict she had with another community that had a more pressing issue than even this one. I was joking with her about which was the more pressing issue, but, you know, I think, this is what we call in the law, reasonable minds can differ, Matt. I have a completely different interpretation of how you read her comments about the single lot exemption. So I'm going to leave it to the board to decide. I'm not going to try to sway anybody one way or the other. We either continue this and we'll come to this same discussion in a couple of weeks with town council present, or, again, my conclusion is that we have no, right now we have a common driveway application in front of us. That's all we have in front of us. And I don't think we have much choice about what to do with that under council's opinion, but I'll leave it to the board as what the board would like to do tonight, and to either accept the continuance and we'll discuss this further, or put an end to it now. That's the choice before us.
I think it would be reasonable to have town council weigh in to the board and inform the board as to what their findings were relative to the application. So I would be for continuing.
Okay. What night did we have in mind for a continuance, Laura?
Our first meeting in December is December 7th.
December 7th. Okay. Are you going to be available, Matt?
I'm checking my calendar right now.
That's the day that will live in infamy.
Yes,
Right.
I was thinking that myself.
Yeah, you don't want to schedule any hearings for a day that will live in infamy.
Is your Wednesday
you
night,
can't
is your
help it.
Wednesday night calendar that full, Matt? Come on.
I just have to check to see
No, I don't.
where I am in December, and it's taking me a moment to pull it up. December 7th is available that evening, yes.
All right. Anybody else want to weigh in on our course of action here?
I concur with Mr. Brewer in appreciating the opportunity to hear from town council about the situation.
And if all the board members haven't, please read her opinion. Was back from, what day was it? June 21, 2022, regarding this matter. So everybody should refresh their memory. Kevin, Deirdre, Chris, anybody want to weigh in? You want to continue it for 2 weeks?
I will just say that I feel like Carolyn gave us her opinion. We heard it in May. And I still stand with what she has said to us, so. I will do what the majority of the board feels is appropriate at this time, but that's where I stand.
Okay, no, and I don't disagree with that. As I said, I think her opinion ties our hands on what we're able to do here, but I don't mind putting this off for 2 more, or, a couple more weeks if that's the pleasure. So, Chris or Kevin?
You're
Kevin,
muted,
you're on
Kevin.
mute, so I'll go. Deirdre, I'm in the same place. It seems like we know what town council's opinion is and we're a bit bound by that, but I'm happy to put that off for 2 weeks if that suits folks. Sorry, Kevin.
No problem, Chris. I recall what town council weighed in on to this board at a prior meeting. And on the basis of hearing that, on the basis of the time spent listening to that, and the basis of time spent weighing the options on that, I'm disinclined to push this to December 7th. But I leave it to others to put forth how they want to move on this.
By December 7th, I presume we have to have a decision on the building inspector about those permit applications by then. What if he denies the permits, what's your plan? You have in that email what you'll do if he allows the permits, but what if he denies them? What's your plan then?
I guess it would
I think
depend.
it's fair for us to know that, so we know.
Sure, I understand. What we do would depend on the basis of the denial. If the denial is based on an interpretation of zoning, we would evaluate that and consider whether to exercise our right to appeal to the Zoning Board of Appeals, which has issued a number of different rulings on single lot exemption lot cases. So.
Okay. All right, well, a number of issues will finally be brought to a head by the 7th, I
Yes, we will know with much more certainty what's going to happen by that time.
Okay. Okay. All right, so the overall consensus seems to be to continue, so can I entertain a motion to continue this to December 7th at 6:30?
Do we have certainty Carolyn is available on December 7th?
No, we don't have that certainty, but we never do, so we'll just make sure it happens. She could have sent somebody tonight, but it would be difficult for another attorney, even her own firm, to weigh in on something she wrote, so we'll make sure she's there. You know, but if not, I'll make sure we have some definitive, to the extent that we don't already, some definitive direction. Again, we'll also know what our posture is with respect to the building permit application, so we'll make sure she's there. Yes.
I just want to add a point of information. This isn't actually an advertised public hearing. This is just an application discussion. So if for some reason Carolyn's not available on the 7th, we have a meeting on the 14th and we could do it the following week.
That would work. And I would be collegial with my fellow counsel and accommodate her schedule.
Yes, well, which is why you were reached out to today, because I didn't want to make a decision here without you having the opportunity to hear it when, you know, depending on which direction we wanted to go. So,
Understood.
all right. So,
That's appreciated.
did somebody make that motion? Or-
Yeah, I made the motion.
All right, second, someone?
I second.
Okay. Roll call, Clark,
Clark Brewer, aye.
Callahan, aye.
Amy Glassmeyer, aye.
Kevin Heine, aye.
Deirdre Hobson, I.
Chris Plex, aye.
All right. We'll see you on the 7th. Whether you're the first thing up kind of depends on what else comes in our agenda, but you know, I expect that, you know, we're gonna put aside more than 15 minutes for this like we did tonight, that, you know, we'll probably get into a meatier discussion on the 7th, so let's plan for that, okay?
Okay,
All
very
right.
good. Thank you,
Thank
folks.
you.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, thanks for being
Yeah.
here, Matt.
All right,
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is 55 South Main Street. Our continued hearing under the Village Business District's special permit and site plan review. So we'll promote who needs to be promoted.
Tom, is the plan to hear any new material from the applicant and then get an update from our peer reviewer?
Well, this is, yeah,
Plan,
I was gonna bring everybody up to date on where we are, so.
Yeah.
Our peer review submitted a detailed report on, I think it's dated September 26th, that covered all the issues about it. There was a response from
I
the
got
applicant.
October 26th.
No, but there was one they issued in September, and then there was
Previous one? Okay,
right, no, that was on like all the issues, and then the applicant has responded, as far as I can tell, and I checked what's filed in our our active application thing on our website tonight, just responded to the traffic section, and now Weston and Sampson has issued a subsequent comment to that. So what we have tonight that's only been fully backed and forth between the two experts is the traffic issues and not some of the other issues that Weston and Sampson raised on September 26th. Weston and Sampson's retainer on this has run out, and the applicant needs to come up with a sum of money to get them back on track, and that's possibly the explanation for why we don't have all of the responses. But what we, and I mentioned this to Attorney Danahy to give just a heads up about tonight, and Attorney Danahy, you mentioned to me that you thought everything from the September 26th peer review was responded to, but I'm not seeing that. At least it's not on our webpage. And then, subsequently, we also got a memo that I think everybody has seen in the last couple of days from Attorney Danahy regarding the height issue. So for tonight, and then I understand that the applicant has spoken further with our Affordable Housing Committee. So tonight, we can certainly address the back and forth on the traffic issues. The issues that are raised and what further action from the applicant might be needed are fairly limited. I'd like to see if we can resolve the height issue once and for all. And if there is some offered resolution to the affordable housing issue, we can entertain that. But with respect to all the other things that Weston and Sampson raised in their memo of September 26th, other than the issue of traffic, we don't seem to have the full back and forth between them and the applicant's engineers at this point. So we're not going to finish this tonight, but I think we can address quite a few issues and try to put some issues to bed in one way or another.
Mr. Chair, may
Yeah.
I mentioned, I actually need to ask this of the planner and her assistant on October 5th, because you had indicated at our last hearing that you wanted a response by October 5th. I personally hand-delivered both my letter, which was about 15 pages, actually 15 pages long, with all of the responses to the peer review for Weston and Sampson, as well as some backup attachment 1 and attachment 2. Simultaneously, I dropped off 6 full plans, which were also submitted in addition to my letter, which I understand that maybe some of your board members just received. I need to know what happened to that letter, because that was in response and should have been shared with Weston and Sampson, because I was not looking for any further delay. We were very prompt. So I have to ask Ms. Lynn and your assistant Cassandra what happened, because literally I personally dropped them off.
All right, well, hold on, John. I mean, I looked at the filings that we have on our website, and there is a 15-page document that was October 4 that came from whatever the company.
Yeah, that was an email that Cassandra asked me.
Yeah, from Howard Stein Hudson. Okay, so it's a 15-page document that has some attachments. But as I look at
You're breaking up. You're breaking up.
as I look at that document that Howard Stein Hudson dated October 4th, that's simply addressing the traffic issues. And this is what then Weston and Sampson has further responded to on October 26th. I still don't see anywhere that we've had a comprehensive response to all of the items, the other non-traffic items on the September 26th Weston and Sampson memo. And that's where there's some disconnect.
I just want to get the disconnect fixed, because right after I dropped them off, I received an email from Cassandra saying, could I drop off the attachments that were part of my letter, which I sent to her on October 5th at 7:20 p.m. And so the letter was sent. It was personally dropped off by me, and I'm just a little dismayed because I'm finding this out the day of our
Well,
hearing.
I'm guessing-
If I could I interrupt, please?
Yeah,
It is
all
on the
right.
website. The October 5th letter is on the website. It was emailed out as an attachment. We distributed it when we received it. I'm not sure what happened with the initial website. There was some problem with our employee intranet that day that did not publish the documents that were uploaded on the back end. So again, I am discovering that there was a problem on that end. However, it was emailed around and it is available on the website. It has been given to Weston and Sampson, and we do have a letter from Attorney Danahy that he did deliver on the 5th. So there is that letter. When I spoke with Weston and Sampson today, they confirmed that they had received the letter. They will, in the additional scope of peer review that we need to replenish to complete an additional piece of this, they will address those points. What they did do in the meantime is the traffic component, which they did have.
All right, let me be clear that what I saw on our website today is John's letter of October 5th regarding the issue of height only, and the October 4th letter from Howard Stein Hudson, which addresses traffic only. I am not seeing that there is something else that responds to the other points in the Weston and Sampson September 26th memo. If that's there, if that has been submitted, we just need to circulate it and post it up there. That's all. I'm not seeing that, but in any event, you know, we're sitting here tonight without the back and forth on those other issues. So let's go forward with, you know, I'm suggesting we go forward with the issues we can go forward on and put some things to bed that we can put to bed. And the Weston and Sampson review money needs to be replenished, and we can go on from there.
Just for the board's benefit, my understanding that we did send a check, I think for 3,400 or something. And if there's still more money to be had or to be sent, we'll have that out. I know that when we found out earlier this week, Monday, that's when we were sending a check. So we'll make sure that Weston and Sampson are paid. I don't want that to be a reason, not saying it is, for any further delay. We'll make sure they'll get paid.
All right. All right. All right. So with the board, is that your pleasure? Let's go ahead with what we can go ahead with and try to cover some ground tonight.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, so the issue of height, let's try to put this to bed. Mr. Danahy has given, what is it, 7 pages, a memo, a 6-page memo on this. You know, I understand what Weston and Sampson has said about it. You know, I'm going to leave this to the board's thoughts. You know, this isn't about, you know, much of this memo is about my comments, and I realize I've been verbal about it, so I'm going to get responded to. But this isn't about the flaws in the bylaw driving my decision here. It is, to me, common sense. The changes in the bylaw are to eliminate the changes in the proposed changes to the definition are to clarify where you measure from the bottom, which came up as an issue on a project within the last year and a half. It is to take out what many people think is the illogic of the midpoint to a sloped roof. And perhaps with respect to things like a mansard roof is to state the obvious that isn't apparently obvious to everyone. But with respect to this roof, I'm driven by the fact of just common sense that this is not a sloped roof. Generally, you know, at least in my general understanding of what a sloped roof is. A sloped roof to me is a pitched roof that comes to a point like this. It is not what we have before us. What we have before us is to me, more of a decorative slope on the front of a flat roof. And John, you mentioned in your thing about, you know, on the slope roof, the measurement starts, you know, with a habitable space, or you said at the roof plate, I believe was the term you used. I mean, all buildings are a square box or a rectangular box, and there's a top that's flat, that's going to be the ceiling of the last floor and the roof. And then you either put a pitched roof on it or you keep a flat roof on it, and you might put, you know, some other decorative elements where you have a mansard roof or a gambrel roof. But the box is still there. And if I understand this correctly, the box here is higher than 35 feet. Yeah, you said being 1/2 of the distance from the plate line, which is the top horizontal line of a building wall upon which the roof rests. Well, the building wall to me is going up above here. It's going beyond this mansard. The mansard's just, you know, this little slope, gable, whatever you want to call it, is just covering it up. But where is the top plate? Where is that plate line in this building? To me, it's higher than 35 feet. And I'd love to see, and I understand what you're dealing with the brook coming through there and having to have a higher first floor. I get all of that, but I just don't, my own view, we can't deviate from what the bylaw tells us as much as we want to see a project go forward. I think it's an improvement over what's there today. So, I mean, I'm still stuck on that. And it's not about that this is ambiguous to me. I think it's plain common sense of what a sloped roof is. And this is not that, in my view. So just my opinion. I'll go around the room. I started with Amy last time. Let me start with Kevin.
I would ask the applicant to post for us to see in front of us a horizontal line, which is their interpretation of the height of this roof from the reference point on the ground in front of the building. I would ask the applicant if it's available to provide that to us right now in real time, so we can see what they are saying is their measurement and the height of it off of a reference point. I want to see this next to the building, however it's called, whatever type of style it is, whatever they're calling sloped and we're calling flat, or other people somewhere land in between. I'd like to see that from the applicant as we discuss this.
Do we have that available, John?
I'd have to
That
ask
would be
my
helpful if we could be looking.
architect, Ted Talukian, to see if he can locate if there's a side profile to reference as a point, between the structure, ground floor, or grade rather, to the roof ridge.
We have a section that we can show on the screen if we can share the screen.
Yeah, go ahead, please. I think that would be helpful to the discussion to visualize this, but.
Okay. So this is a section through the building.
Ted, we haven't
And
seen
I'm
it
just
yet.
blowing it up so you can see the dimensions.
We don't
Uh,
see it
See the
yet.
screen.
We haven't
Oh,
seen it yet. We're
let me
seeing
go
like
back
a-
We
to
can see a
sharing.
a big blue flower.
All right.
I'm gonna say it looks like ribbon candy.
Yep, 1 second. We got to do screen two. No, it's screen two.
There we go.
All right, can you
There
see
you
it
go.
now?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry about that. So the question was from Kevin, correct, about where the line is from the building height. Our mean grade is approximately 9 5/8 of an inch above this grade number that we have here. So basically, if we took the midpoint of the roof, it's about 32'9" to the midpoint of the sloped roof. And if you take it to grade elevation and add an extra 9 inches, you're about 32 feet to the midpoint of the sloped roof.
Okay, that's most helpful. I'm not gonna buy that that's to the midpoint of a slope roof when I'm seeing a significantly flat roof above it. And if you look at the grade for that from your reference point, it looks to be about 38 feet. Correct me if I'm wrong.
To the parapet of that, it is 38 and change.
what is it to the roof line below that parapet? That's
Uh,
like another 6 inches or 5 inches? or something?
Yeah, this dimension where the hand is
Yeah,
showing right
yeah,
here, about
yeah,
6 inches, yeah.
And I just have a follow-up question.
Yeah,
This
go ahead.
doesn't show on that flat roof portion any HVAC systems or any exhaust stacks or energized systems that would provide heating or ventilation to the building. Are those a part of what would be envisioned on that flat surface?
Yes, we're setting back the equipment fairly far back from the edge of the peak of the roof. And I think we had a sightline section in one of our earlier drawings that would show its viewing angle from the street. Also, I will go back to these perspectives here. These are actually real perspectives from the street with the equipment on the roof that's showing that it's not seen from the pedestrian level.
Okay.
All right,
And
that's
so
very
that-
helpful. Thank you.
That 32-foot line is the midpoint of the slope roof in this elevation, just to connect all the dots together for everybody.
All right. Well, all right. I won't say anything further right now. Deirdre, anything you want to add?
So I'm sorry, so where the peak is on the very top, is that the 38 feet, 38
Yes.
and change?
Yes,
And-
that's correct.
And the HVAC equipment and all of that, is that?
Is set back,
It's
set back from
back,
the roof
but
line.
is it more than the 38 plus feet? With the HVAC stuff on top? In other
Yes,
words,
it would be. Yes,
Yeah,
Yeah, but your bylaws are permitting that. Like
Yeah,
you
I
said, a
believe it.
fireplace, your fireplace is not considered as a part of the measurement for the
Okay.
height. It's the
Right.
same with those type of.
Correct.
Unless it's habitable space, then I would say, yes,
Right.
then that would be in violation of your bylaw. Because remember, the max you can go is 40 feet. with the slopes. And this is under the 40 feet.
Okay. Thank you.
Chris?
So, Tom, if I'm pulling up the right document, it looks like the peer review found that the plan with this adjusted roof angle is compliant with the bylaw. So
Yes.
that's one thing that I'm
And
taking.
I happen to disagree with them.
Okay. Another thing that I'm taking into consideration is that from the street, to us with multiple angles at our disposal, it's obvious that's a flat roof. From the street, it looks pretty good. You might not know that there's a flat roof up there, especially if you can't see the HVAC equipment at the top. And the other thing I'll note is that I think, and the architects may be able to verify this for us, I think this building is still shorter than the Red Lion right next to it. So those are the things that I just want to throw into the conversation. I'm not sure where that leaves me because I agree with you, Tom, that this seems like a convenient interpretation of a poorly written bylaw, but I just wanted to throw those other points out there.
Yeah, Lauren, were you able to find any, in anticipation, and since John's letter did some comparisons of other properties in the village, I asked Lauren if she could find the data for the Red Lion expansion. And do we know what the height of the Red Lion is?
I don't have that information and John Hallen wasn't available today.
Okay. And I don't believe the Red Lion received any variances. I doubt that they would have. All right, Clark.
Did Amy go yet?
No, we're going around the corn and you're next.
Okay. Well then, regarding the height, I have made comments on this in past meetings that the under the definition, non-human habitated equipment and antennas, railings, cupolas, chimneys, as provided they don't exceed 5% of the roof area, they can extend above the roof area. So
Yeah.
I guess I'm not concerned with the equipment per se, provided that it's 5% of the overall or less of the overall area. And in reading and rereading the definition for height, it's pretty much set up for either this or a flat roof or a sloped roof. In this particular case, we have a hybrid, which is approximately 1/3 sloped and 2/3 flat. But even flat roofs have pitch to them. And it's possible because they have to pitch to drain, so they aren't truly dead flat. Where the maximum height doesn't exceed the 40 feet, and the flat or almost flat roof, if you actually took the average of the low point of the flat roof and the an aggregate of the 1/3 area that is pitched, you might be pretty close to the 35 feet on as an average. But the bylaw is really set up for either a flat roof or a pitched roof, and not the combination that we see here, or the combination that we saw on the Red Lion and would expect to see on just about any project like this one. And so under the height definition, it's my belief that that the applicant has complied with the height requirement.
Okay.
I just
I'm
want to
sorry.
interject for a second. Can
No,
you hear
I'm
me,
sorry,
Mark?
Clark, are you set with your comments?
Yeah, those are my comments.
Okay.
Tom,
who
can you
who
hear
wants to-
me?
Yeah.
Tom?
Yeah.
'Cause I'm hearing from my clients that they can't hear me. I just want to make sure. Can the board members hear me?
We can hear you. It's very soft.
It is, okay. Try to see if I can fix
I
that.
can hear you, John. All right, Amy,
Yes, thank you for that education. I would ask that to ensure that the strategy that's been proposed here does indeed include the best effort possible to have the equipment on the roof be obscured. So the architect can actually draw that on one of these diagrams and spin it around at different angles, so we would be able to see whether or not that's going to be something that is seen from the road or from other points in the town. Because I think that's aesthetically more troubling than it itself has its own aesthetic problem. So I'd like to see it modeled in.
There were some aerial photos or renderings. Before, can you guys scroll to the A 0.1, a couple of shots before this that show the equipment in 3D as an aerial view? Yeah, that one.
What if we were, can you hear me, Tom?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I hope everybody, is it better this time sounding wise?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. We could easily put up like what I would call like a Whittles walk around certain components to, shall we say, obscure those units, if that's something, Ms. Glassmeyer, you think would be appropriate. I do notice that one Brook Street, which is diagonally across from us, it has a flat roof, and they did just that to kind of make it obscure whatever equipment that's on the rooftop.
That's like screening.
Correct.
I think that would be a useful aesthetic exercise without having to implement it, but to see what you would come up with.
Sure. That's,
Yeah,
that makes sense, especially when you're in the parking lot, possibly if you can see anything from that direction.
And that would fall under the category of railings that's in the 5% exclusion.
Exactly. Yep.
All right, anything else, Amy?
No, not at this time. I have other questions, but not of this discussion.
Yeah, okay, on this topic, we're gonna bring this topic to a head. Can we go
Tom,
back?
can
to
I
the-
just follow up on Clark's point with regard to his opinion? Has our counsel, who's not here tonight, made an opinion as to whether this complies or not with our current 35-foot bylaw?
No, and I don't believe she's been asked either.
Can we ask her? And here's
Oh.
why. I don't want something to come in at 38 plus or minus feet. And then on the basis of every other application that follows and similar roofs, say it worked here. And you had something that said 35 feet, but you clearly have permitted something that's 38 feet with a flat roof.
Yeah.
And all
We've
steam
got
ahead.
peer review.
I hear what you're saying. I don't know that her opinion would matter one way or the other, because I think it's ultimately a decision that this board needs to make, and that's what I'd like to try to get to that point. But let's see where we go with in a minute, and if we need to have her opinion weigh in, we're going to continue this phase of the discussion. We can certainly get an opinion from her.
Well,
But yes,
here's your point, Tom.
it has a precedential value, and we have to be conscious of that. So,
Here's the point. There's varying members that have familiarity and an understanding of architectural terms, engineering and design. That all comes to play with regard to these measurements and points of reference and what's accepted within the area of practice. And if it isn't our council that knows whether something fits or doesn't fit with our current bylaw, then I'd ask our professional planner to weigh in as to whether this, under accepted planning and design considerations, fits or doesn't fit with what we currently have for requirements.
okay.
And Kevin, I would like just to add there that the building inspector did weigh in on the height at one point.
And said what, please?
He
The building
did-
inspector said that this is compliant with the slopes, that they are not in excess, that in other words, the proposal is not in violation of the flat roofs.
Which is what our peer review engineers said as well.
Correct.
And again, they're not, in my view, they're not the final word, but Let me just make my point clear with that picture. Can we go back to the first sketch that had the measurements?
The section, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now, the definition says, and again, John, your letter pointed this out. The midpoint shall be half the distance from the plate line to the ridge line. All right, so where is the plate line on that?
It's right where the hand is, Tom. That's the roof, where the roof commences. That's the plate line. And that goes to the midpoint between the plate line and the roof, the ridge, which is where the midpoint is right now at the 32.9.
And here's my problem is that in what everybody would understand to be a pitched roof like this, there is no living space within that roof area. It is a roof that is put, you can't see where my fingers are going on your sketch, but it would go the top of the living space here. That to me is the plate line.
Well, Tom, you can take a look at a mansard roof, which has, again, roof lines that are sloped back. And then at the very top, it's not necessarily completely flat, but again, they're sloped at a much smaller degree. You can take a look at a salt box. Salt box has a complete slope going back in habitable space. And that's where I think, to Kevin's point, you're looking at your bylaws, you're trying to evaluate them. You're looking at your village design guidelines that are trying to take a look at your village and like, how do you view it consistently and applying it consistently? What you know is if you have a flat building, a literally flat building, like we do now, the gas station, it's measured from the ground up to the ridge or the parapet. If you have a slope, obviously you go in between where the roof starts and where the roof ends at the top, and you go to the midpoint. And as I said, the reason for that is because there is habitable space between your peaks. It's diminished. And that's the reason why the bylaws in your town, just like any other town, gives more relief for people who have slopes, because when you think about it, we have slopes because of the weather. Otherwise, if you go out in the Midwest or the Southwest, they're all flat. And that's so that you could have habitable space, because if you max it out at 35 and you don't have any sloped roofs, you're going to go lower than 35 feet. And so in this situation, in your village district, if you're trying to get all these uses, whether it's business, whether it's office, retail, and habitable residential, you want to give that relief so that you can maximize multiple uses. If this was a single use and you're going to say, no, it should only be this, I would grant you that. But you're asking people to do more in this, giving public benefits, whether it's with parks, whether it's with walkways, whether it's with parking or off-street parking. So you should give the relief. Again, we're not asking for a variance. We're not asking to go beyond 40 feet. We're saying it's between 35 feet and 40 feet. And as represented here, it's not maxing it out either at 40 feet. We're in between. And that's why I think the board should keep your discretion, but taking a look at this, and I realize that you may come to the conclusion it's flat. Tom, that's you. But I think the problem you run into is then, how do you apply that going forward? Because yes, Red Lion Inn has a flat portion. One Brook Street has a flat portion. You go all the way around because every aspect there is, and this is, in my opinion, this is your first case of building pursuant to, in your village district, pursuant to those guidelines and trying to get all those components, affordability and retail, maybe even office space on a site that is woefully insufficient. So, and I think the other thing about the guidelines is this. That's why I highlighted it. They're trying to deal with the infill between the building next to us, which is Red Lion Inn. I think Mr. Plex, you'd mentioned that. How does that go across? Because if you cap things at various levels, when you start at grade, because all the buildings are not on grade, they're at various points where one may be perched higher than the other. And if you're going to say it's capped at this, then you will have undulation, at least from your roof lines. Whereas you want to be able to maintain kind of like this even flow going from building to building and building up the street.
All right, well, again, I think the roof is measured after when you get to the top of the usable living space here, and that's up here. So to me, this is 3.5 feet too high, or three and 3/4 feet too high. But all right, let's bring the issue. I want to bring this issue to the head, so we're not arguing it ad nauseum. So,
I was just gonna add one more data point in speaking with the Affordable Steering Committee, that they had a similar perspective, aligned with Chris's thought, that from the street perspective, they cared more of what the height looked like versus the back, towards the back of the building. I know that they have a certain amount of weight, but not final decision, but I thought that would be good use to understand their opinion.
all right, let me ask, is there any members of the public out there that we have 4 attendees, other attendees that wish to weigh in on this? On just this issue of the height? Anyone? Nope. Okay. All right. So I'd like to put this to bed one way or the other with the board. So, we're not taking a formal vote on, like we would for the final decision, but let's just poll everybody. I mean, is this acceptable or unacceptable with respect to solely the issue of height? I think John and Cassie, you should take to heart the comments about additional screening. That never has been an issue for me, because I know what the bylaw says about HVAC and all those additions. So that's never been an issue, but I think you should take those to heart. And
We'll make sure that they're
do-
going to be
do
screened.
what's
I agree.
appropriate.
That makes sense to hide them, even if you're maybe above, like at the Red Lion Inn, and you're on the 3rd floor and you're looking down. You don't want to be seeing units like that. We'll make sure there's adequate screening for it.
I'll just second that, John. We'll make sure of that in the drawings.
Thank you. All right, so let me just go poll the board alphabetically. The height, acceptable or not acceptable? Clark?
Clark Brewer, acceptable based on my, the actual height definition in our zoning bylaw, which I have in front of me.
And Tom Callahan, unacceptable based on the same reason, which is also in front of me. But okay. Amy?
I would like to see the screening, and
Amy,
oh, sorry.
the issue of height, please. We've
Yeah, I
already.
know, I understand that, but that is also,
It's a straw poll, non-binding.
I would say that I am still getting familiar with this particular version of it, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Deirdre?
I see the difficulties in our bylaw, but as it's written right now, I think that this is acceptable.
Okay. Kevin, and I apologize. Skipping over you alphabetically. Kevin?
Yeah, I find it acceptable as presented.
Chris?
I say acceptable based on the peer review findings, the visual benefit of the sloped roof as evident from what we have on screen now, and also because it's still shorter than the building right next to it.
Okay. All right. So that issue is put to bed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, board members.
That's what
Thank you.
democracy. That's what democracy is all about. All right. So
It's
the
been
other
an
part.
interesting debate.
The other part we could deal with. Lauren, are you able, you think, to put up Weston and Sampson's October 26th memo?
Yes, just give me a moment.
If the architect could stop the screen share, we'll get.
We will take this offline. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having those at the ready for us.
Absolutely.
Probably didn't anticipate that.
We're always ready. Thank you.
All right, so this again is just focused on the issues of traffic. And we can put some of these issues to bed, I think, tonight as well. We go down, there were a number of points where, Weston and Sampson made comments, there was a response. And Weston and Sampson, I'm assuming, acknowledge no further comment at this time means it's acceptable to them.
Correct.
Where I started to see that there was an issue still was, and this is another one folks, we just did with the Beechwood Street project. This is a completely new use for the site. And I don't know if you heard our earlier meeting tonight, John, but, with this and with the project down at the Atlantica site, we in the zoning board and that other project as well are conditioning on future traffic studies, since we have completely new uses here. And, particularly with all these comments about the data being impacted by COVID and the uses, that might be something that we would condition here too, that there be a further review of what the actual traffic impacts of this site generates after a certain period of time. So it's just a thought to be prepared for, to be aware of and be prepared for. On page 6 of Weston and Sampson's report, there seems to still be an outstanding issue of how these 18 spaces are going to work, seeing that 12 of them are are tandem spaces. And Weston and Sampson is asking for further clarification on this, since there are 2 and 3 bedroom units. So if you could address that, please.
Yeah, I think, so if I'm not mistaken, what we're looking at is some of the units will have 2 parking spaces, okay? And kind of like the old traditional way that if you grew up in a 3-bedroom home with 1 single driveway, you park your car in, you park your second car in. If you have need to get the first car that's been parked first, you got to move the other one out to get it back, to move it. So that's going to be incumbent upon the unit owners who do get 2 spaces to be able to manage and pull in and pull out and work their way within the site to be able to park and to maneuver their own parking. Obviously, that's a benefit to them because they have 2 parking spaces. If we only permitted 1, then that other parking space or parking the car is going to have to go somewhere else. And I know here in the town of Situate, that's a major issue with the Mill Wharf because they only permitted 1 parking spot and everybody's parking in Cole Parkway on the water side. So our goal right now was every unit's going to get a parking space, except some units are going to have tandem, and then they'll be able to work their way to be able to pull out a car, get their car out of there, and then, and some people may have like a sports car or a car that they only take out on sunny days. Then if that's the case, they park it in first and they use their other car on a regular basis.
Are you, well, I think their comment with the 2 or 3 bedrooms is there the potential that some of these units may have 3 cars?
I think what they were getting at as well. I think what they were getting at as well is that the units are made up of 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom units. So the tandem, the 2 parking spaces will be assigned to the 2 and 3 bedroom units, not the 1 bedroom.
Correct, but I think to your point, Tom, you're saying if they have 3 bedrooms, they're going to be 3 cars.
Potentially, depending on who's living in.
So, may I share the screen? Would that be okay to share the plan?
Well,
Sure.
generally, whether you have 1 or 3 bedroom houses or apartments, you don't know how many cars you're going to get. And an average, might be 2 cars per unit. But what we require is what we require. And then because the project's in a close proximity to the town lot, they get a little bit of flexibility.
And we're trying to offload that. That's the key. In other words, if we're only permitting 12 parking spaces, then, like I said, it's like what I said in Situate. Somebody goes parks in the town lot, and that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to put it on site altogether.
Yeah.
And the zoning bylaws require 1 parking space per unit, and we are doing that. There are 12 units and 12 spaces, plus the 6 additional tandem spaces.
This is going to be 12 units total.
Correct.
With how many bedrooms total?
That is it.
My concern, I know what the bylaw would require, but, particularly if this is, this can either be downsizing housing or it could be starter housing. And what if you have 3 young people who are roommates in a 3-bedroom, and they're each going to have a car? That's the concern. where they're gonna go. And if they're gonna go into the town parking spot, that lot, that creates all other issues about everything that's going on in the village, but so I'm just curious as to how many bedrooms within those 12 units.
But just to answer your question on the bedroom count, there are basically 2 1-bedrooms, 8 2-bedrooms, and 2 3-bedrooms. That would be the math, but just to go back to the zoning, it is 1 per unit, and we do have 12 independent spaces. And as a benefit, we have an additional 5 spaces for those units that may be 1, 2, or 3, depending on their car usage. But it clearly is meeting the bylaw requirements of 1 parking spot per unit. You have 7 where my hand is showing, and an additional 5. And the additional 5 are to the benefit of the units.
And is the commercial space generating some parking spaces?
That is exempted because due to a separate bylaw section. Because we are within a certain distance of the public park.
But the,
We are doing.
Ted, if you could just scroll to the right, you just show the 5 commercial parking spaces along South
Well,
Main.
well, there is a benefit there that we can show too. So currently, right now, there are 2 large curb cuts on either side with 2 off-street, well, on-street parking lot spots here. And the new site plan closes those curb cuts and adds an additional 3 for a total of 5. So we've actually added more public parking back to South Main Street. And just the section of the bylaw that exempts it is as per section 7.1-K.
Well, it will have to be clear on the site with signage to not have your commercial tenants and their employees parking in these lots. They're gonna have to park somewhere else, but
We can provide signage in the suitable locations.
anyone from the, I checked this off as a comment that was unresolved in this October 26 memo. Is there anything, any member of the board has to say further on this, or any concerns you have about this particular issue?
I do. I have something.
Yes, Amy, go ahead.
I think you've done the best job you can. I am concerned that the distance between the parked cars is very narrow, and that it is not hard to notice that in this town, many people have very big Suburbans, trucks, etc. So I would feel a lot better about not having problems if there was a simulation of how a car on one side and the other, how they're going to make the turn. And I would want to see different size vehicles to see that it's going to be possible. The second thing I have to say, which is,
Can I just ask you a quick question on that? Just what part of the bylaw are you referencing that you would be concerned? Because we meet the measurements per the bylaw. So which part of the bylaw are you speaking to that addresses that concern?
I actually am not speaking specifically to a part of the bylaw. I'm asking a question of logic.
Being what?
Being that if you have 2 large cars parked in those parking spaces, 2 Suburbans as an example, how will the traffic function inside that small space?
So if I may, Jeff Hassett here with Morse Engineering. Section 7 of the zoning bylaws has diagrams for the required dimensions of parking spaces. And for regular 90-degree parking, you have to provide a 24-foot wide aisle, which we do comply with. And that does tend to be the standard in just about all the towns on the South Shore, is a 24-foot aisle in a commercial parking lot.
When did we establish those measurements?
They are probably old and.
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking a question of just reasonableness based on the size of vehicles today. I don't think that's an unfair question to ask. And I have one other further question, which is, that is very tight. If there was a fire in the building, do you think that the vehicles could be brought out in time, or would we have a conflagration? That's a very tight space with vehicles that have explosive materials in them.
Well, the building will meet all the requirements under the fire code. I think, to your point of if you're looking for some kind of like traffic movement with SUVs or in particular larger vehicles like the Suburbans or the Expeditions, we can try to do that. I think obviously, generally, the people who have those larger vehicles are the ones who have families and, for purposes of toting a lot of equipment and stuff around or gear, as I would say, we don't envision that there are going to be a lot of multifamilies with a lot of kids living in this section. I think you're going to find more. It's going to be people with scaled down, kind of like more expensive cars, sedans, hopefully electric, because that's a component that we'd certainly like to see going forward, so that people who are downsizing are moving into the downtown, as opposed to families moving in. But to your point, we can certainly try to provide you with the movement. I don't think that's
Or just in terms of conceptually, how will this work? And I recognize that you've met the bylaws, but we all are acknowledging of this day, last day, and for the last 3 years, that our zoning bylaw is deficient because it hasn't been updated. So it would be a tragedy to not try to think some of these things through so that we have a safe and wonderful project.
I can tell you from the perspective of the bylaw committee, when we look at the parking bylaw, we do want to update it, to the state of the art of, how many spaces per commercial square feet or seats in a restaurant, and the size. All of those things have to be reviewed and updated because all of these bylaws, our town and the surrounding towns, are old. They are dated, and they probably haven't anticipated all of the mega vehicles that are out there. But so we will look at that going forward. But the question here is, what can we do now? But in anticipating what Clark is going to be discussing at our zoning forum in December, and you talk about electric cars, are you making any accommodation for the future? Because this is diverting from the topic, but we don't have the bylaws in place yet for the future and green development, sustainable development. But are you, this is a brand new building. Are you anticipating any kind of systems that are going to address the future? Whether it's electrical cars or other.
You mean like charging stations or
charging
photovoltaics
stations
on
but
the roof?
Yeah, but even beyond that, any
Super
other
insulation?
super environmental features here that future bylaws are going to require.
So, Tom, to your point, our response, which was in our letter that I sent, was that we certainly, our ownership team is taking that as under consideration. I think our big point was, where are we going with different components? And I think that's a good thing for this project. And I know that we're kind of excited about that. So that's certainly a consideration that we're willing to understand or undertake. I think, obviously, the parking, I know Ms. Glassmeyer had mentioned the last meeting at one point, maybe it was the last meeting that we weren't here because we continued it. He said something about parking. So I was trying to get a sense of what was the issue. Is it the tandem parking? Because we actually thought tandem parking was going to be a good thing because we know people have more than one car, and so we're trying to offset the parking that we know could easily go into the parking lot. We understand, though, I see what you're saying, the concerns that if you're going to have tandem parking, larger vehicles, because yes, that's a fact of life now. You see all these big vehicles being driven. So we'll take a look at the movement to see how it goes. And I think the other thing is, even if there is a Suburban there or an Expedition, they're not all going to be there at the same time. There's probably one or two because everybody has different tastes for vehicles, is what we anticipate. But we'll look at that. But yes, that's certainly a consideration, Tom, that we're looking at with electrical charging stations.
Yeah, and the environmental issues might have been, the environmental stuff might have been in another part of Weston Sampson's September letter to get to, but it just popped in my head at the moment. But all right.
May I just add one quick question? The zoning on the size of the spot, which may help alleviate some of the pressure on this, is that the width of a spot under the zoning is 9.5 feet by 20, and a conventional parking spot is typically 8.5 by 20. So they're actually much wider than most conventional parking spots, which would help, I think, address some of this issue as well.
I mean, and I think we all appreciate that you have the problem that you need 18 spaces into this confined space, so,
I mean, remember,
the
our
tandem
first
is-
idea was, we're gonna try to put a parking garage in there, an automated one. It was just because of the ground and everything, it's too cost prohibitive. So we were trying to get as much parking on site as possible, and we just thought it was a public benefit to keep excess parking on site than it would be to offload it into the public area.
Yeah.
I think the tandem spots, they're kind of weird, except if the two tandem spots are assigned to a specific unit, then the people in the unit can manage their own parking. And I think that was the answer that we didn't have when it was first introduced. And for me, I think that settles the management of those tandem parking spots. Because if it's a free for all, then it really doesn't work. You have to call your neighbor, and the neighbor's not there, and your car is trapped, and that just doesn't work. Like
totally
Attorney
agree.
Dennehy said, it's like a single family house in a tight neighborhood where you have a single strip driveway. You have two cars, the person who's in the back has got to move it out in the morning or move it out in the evening before and plan ahead. That's a part of the people who live together can manage their parking accommodations.
Clark,
And
we
it
totally
might be that
Antenna-
these spots, that the tandem spots don't necessarily get used in the town parking lot. It gets used more for this particular project.
All right, any other board members have a comment on this particular point of the parking spaces? If not, let's move on, Lauren, to page 7 of the Weston and Sampson memo. Ted, if you could unminimize your screen for the moment.
Absolutely. I'm gonna do that for you.
Thank you. All right, back
You're
to page 7. The next point that is a point that's needs resolution. John, this will be on you.
Easement.
A written easement.
Okay.
I think anytime we, and this happened down with the harbor projects, anytime the town is going to be involved with an easement, we need to have it in writing and approved by council and approved by the select board. So I assume that's something you're going to be working on in writing. So the sooner you have it, if you have a draft easement in place, we're ready to close this hearing and make a decision, the sooner the better, and then we can get it to town council.
Yep, I'll take care of that.
I would make one comment about the easement, not to direct the applicant's counsel to the harbor, because it was in the town's interest and it was in the project's interest. This may not be the same kind of arrangement, so I think we need to be prepared for that.
I'm trying to grasp what you're saying here.
Well,
If this
the
is an
town-
easement.
The town had something of its property on the applicant, and the applicant had something on the town's property. So we swapped the easements.
Yeah,
And
but here their use is going on to town property, and that requires an easement.
I know, I understand that, but I'm saying that maybe there will be a financial consequence of the easement. It's not like the harbor project.
Okay, all right. I guess I was equating it in the fact that when we involved with easements, we want them in writing, not to equate it exactly with the harbor. But if the private owner is going to be using town property, we need a written easement for it. All right, but the sooner that's drafted is the better.
Yep.
And, the first instance should come from you, not from town council.
I'll take
All
care of
right,
that.
page 8. At the top, Weston and Sampson is still pointing out that it does not appear that the minimum 5-foot wide ADA ramp is being provided. So that needs to be addressed.
Jeff?
Absolutely. We'll take care of that. We'll widen it to the 5 feet recommended.
Okay, and then The next one about landscaping. The applicant requests a waiver, parking lot landscaping should not have a continuous curve in all places to allow. In the case, the landscaped island is up gradient to the parking area.
Do you want a waiver from us to request it, Tom?
Well, I mean, Weston and Sampson is requesting that the waiver request be in writing, and I would agree with that.
Okay.
And be specific, but then I'm looking at your response to their original comment, and is this waiver really necessary? It's not realistic to comply with the requirement, and maybe Ted needs to pull up the plans again so we can see this.
Ted, are you there? There you go.
I mean, is
Yes,
it,
sorry,
is
just
it-
pulling
is
it
it
up
that-
right now.
so
So-
which area are we talking about, where those three trees are?
Yeah, so in that area along Parking Way, there is a landscape bed there.
Yeah,
And what the comment was is that the parking area does not slope to that landscape area. I think the intent of the bylaw is to make the landscape area a low point to collect runoff.
correct.
In this case, though, parking lot way is a couple feet higher in elevation than the parking area. And at the edge of the parking area, there's a retaining wall. So it's not realistic with the landscape bed being higher in elevation. So it's really not realistic to pitch
Is
the
it-
water towards that wall.
Where's the retaining wall? Between the trees and the parking area?
Yeah, correct.
Is it impossible?
Also,
to
the positive,
is it
the
impossible
pitch will
not to
be
see?
the pitch will be away from this area to center drain and not be pitching towards the landscape in any event. So I think this is important to note is that the proposed slope would have a center area drain here, which would catch the surface stormwater, and it would not be pitching back to a landscape zone in any event. So,
And it's also porous asphalt.
yeah.
Okay. And that, there's nothing that can be done about, I mean, the first thought that had occurred to me was sinking the landscape area somewhat, but that,
Yeah, I mean, you could
you're
do
telling
that,
me
but
then
you're
the parking
providing
lot
it.
is, where is the drainage in the parking lot going?
The
So
parking lot in the drainage, it's a porous asphalt. So the water will infiltrate through the asphalt. But then we have as a backup measure, a catch basin capturing, that can capture overflow. And then that is piped out into the roadway drainage system and ultimately to a culvert.
Okay.
also, I think just to the comment around sinking the landscape, I think the benefit here is a good buffer to the parking and a nice green edge to the pedestrian way and also adequate screening as mentioned to the parking area. So I think from a design point of view, it achieves a lot of other benefits. And
Anybody on the board have any thought about this?
I think if we take a step back from the visual benefits, I think this is an opportunity lost if we can't look to a design that would provide an infiltration gallery. This is an area with a significant amount of non-pervious surfaces, notwithstanding the driveway that you've designed in the infiltration points and design aspects of that. But the town parking lot is not a porous surface. The driveway going to that parking lot that would be just south of this area we're discussing right here is not a porous surface. Sidewalks in the front of the building, South Main Street itself these are all impervious surfaces. And I think the opportunity may be lost here if we're not really taking out our pencils and our design options here and looking at them fully to see if there's a way to accommodate some infiltration in this and also get the visuals that this does provide as something that sets off the parking area or the underneath of the building from someone approaching along that road to the south.
hey, Jeff, I'm sorry, Kevin, I was just gonna add something that is there's a possibility that we could pitch to your point. We could look at re-pitching the water to this planted edge here and lower this planted edge to achieve some of the goals that were pointed out.
I think that would be positive just because if we can take some of the loading off of the culvert and you know, we all know what culverts end up doing during these 100-year storms we get every 2 years around here. they get overloaded, okay? And the culverts themselves drain to areas that are overloaded or subject to tidal influence, okay?
Mhm.
I think we need to get as much as we can out of the design feature here. And if this is an infiltration gallery that can have a slope to it to maximize this as a point and take some of the load off of a culvert, I think that's a design feature that could go some real distance here to help alleviate some other issues we have in and around this area of town.
Yeah, we can look at that. And Jeff, I think we could just put our heads together on this, look at lowering this planter edge and pitching it back and achieving some of the things that Kevin is bringing up.
Sure, we can look into that.
See if you could do that, and if you, again, but if you end up with the waiver idea, then you have to put it in writing with the specifics, so. All right, back to, I think the last comment that remained open was on page 9 of the Weston and Sampson letter, if we could get that back up. And that's what our peer review is still looking for, a sightline diagram overlaid on the proposed site plan, so it can be reviewed in relation to the proposed building. So I think that's a requirement we want to have, for the next hearing, so that we can take.
Jeff, can you take care of that?
I probably have talked to the traffic consultant about it, but either
Melissa.
Adam or us can take care of it.
Melissa and us, we'll have that then.
Okay. All right, well, we got that memo, I think, out of the way. So last issue I want to see if we can address tonight to some point of conclusion, maybe, maybe not, is the affordable housing piece. Cassie, I understand you met with the Affordable Housing Committee again. I just remind everybody that theirs is a recommendation. It's not binding, but where do you stand with their recommendation, or do they have one?
They haven't made quite a recommendation quite yet, Tom. Paul, it was the first time meeting with Paul, the second time meeting with everyone else. Paul wasn't able to meet the first time, so yesterday was more of a high-level overview and just discussing the project in detail to give him an idea of what we envision for the site. So we would like to further just the discussion of affordable housing. We hear everyone loud and clear. We take it very seriously regarding the affordable housing. What did come up yesterday that was a good point was that just thinking through rentals and condos, and I think that we really need to just kind of make a decision on that. And so
Yes, you do.
Lauren had made the good point about all of the rentals, we did rentals would only be considered a part of the SAHI is if we did 20% affordability on site. And so I think financially that does not work for us. So that's one data point that we've learned since discussing with the planning board and the affordable steering committee. So, and also I think that we had learned that it doesn't really matter if we do affordables or condos if something is off-site, because only the units off-site would be considered deed restricted. So if we were going condos, it wouldn't really matter if the units were on-site or off-site, if that makes sense.
Yeah, again, but remember that part of the reason for the changes to the village zoning was to encourage affordable quotes, housing, not necessarily 40B definition of affordable. So, you need to be conscious of that. High-priced condos is not what this town needs.
Agreed. And I also think the other side of that is making, so if we don't want to make the units on site feel exclusive or uber expensive because of having to accommodate the affordable status on site. So that's another balance that we're trying to figure out on site versus off site, because if they're on site, it unfortunately would increase the market rate prices. So that was another thing that we discussed high level with the affordable steering committee, and it seemed well received that they understood that if it had to be if we did do it on site, it would mean that the market rates would be increased, whether they be rentals or condos.
You could take the Avalon approach, which is to design all their units to look the same, whether they're market rate or affordable.
Yeah, unfortunately, you don't have 200 plus units here. to work with. So it's a little different, but
Is
yeah.
there any stipulation for the targeting of senior housing as a part of 40B? I don't remember reading that, but in a lot of other parts of the country, when you're asked to do affordable housing, you're given choices about multifamily, elderly, et cetera. And I know that Cohasset has a number of units where that's the case. Lauren?
You don't have to raise your hand. I knew I was gonna go right to you, Lauren. So,
I was gonna say, thank you. Without getting too far into the weeds, the way that the subsidized housing inventory, which is what everybody thinks about for 40B compliance, it doesn't factor in age restricted housing, and it actually, and oftentimes the criteria to meet the eligibility to be able to be living in one of these units, that you either have to be a first time home buyer, there's extreme asset limits, there's a whole lot that goes into it, which can be very problematic for the senior population. Just, there's a lot, but short answer is no. 40B and affordable and elder housing do not go hand in hand. And oftentimes it's not recommended because of some of those implications of financing and in situations where people are on a fixed income.
So for the next 5 questions, I'm going to just go up or down.
But Amy, I think to your point, this type of housing would definitely, from a security perspective, accessibility perspective, ADA compliance perspective, it would be a great option for seniors. So we do take that into consideration as well.
okay. All right, before we close, Lauren, anything on the topics we've discussed tonight that you want to add to or comment on?
No, just a point of clarification, which Cassie already covered. In a rental project, you would need actually 25% of all the units, so it's even a greater percentage. And I think that is something that I'd be happy to give some information to the board members just about, in general, affordability and sort of benefits that you can look for in development and how they impact the margins, just so that you sort of have a general understanding of what the metrics are and why this is such a decision point for Cassie and team to figure out, because if you're going to be asking for more that's going to really just eat into the margins, you start to strip away, you can't have it all. So it's like, do you want, what are your priorities in a project? Do you want to see affordability? Do you prefer to see home ownership? Do you want to see more public benefit? Those are the type of trades that you have to see. So I will send some more information for you to consider. Other than that, I think you've hit a lot of good points.
The difference between 10 and 25% here is 2 units and 3 units. It's really just 1 unit, just so we know that.
That's still quite a bit for a small
Oh, I get it. No, I get it. But we also should just know that in terms of real numbers, number of the units. And, Pleasant Street voluntarily gave us the 25%, but they were what? I don't know, 14, 16 units. They were a bigger project. So, all right. Anything else that, on traffic or anything that, or any of the other issues we talked about that you see we need to address further? Or?
I have nothing further to add. I think you've made a lot of salient points. So I've taken notes on what the follow-up items are.
Just to follow up on the affordable housing thing,
Yep.
it is possible to find outside financing for a buy down of 1 additional unit if they were rental, and then have all the units count. It's not necessarily a requirement that the developer fit take the burden of the entire cost of that additional unit on their own. There are other sources that could make the project at 25% if it's rental. So there's options.
Okay. All right. So for going forward on this, I think we're all anxious to get this to conclusion at some point. So Lauren will pass along to you, John, the exact dollar amount that Weston and Sampson needs. Some of it is the October 26th memo that they generated on traffic was done by them with the till being empty. So some of the money is to pay for that, pay for post. I think they ran out of money on September 30th, so it's for post-September work. And then there's the additional money going forward. If they're, so we're dealing with the rest of the points other than traffic on their September 26th memo. If you have responded to those points, let's make sure we get those circulated. And let's make sure Weston and Sampson has their subsequent response ready for the next meeting that we do. And I know you mentioned to me that what's his name? Jeff Reardon from Weston Sampson is going to be available for our next couple of meetings dates if we need him. And I think we would need him. So let's set the date for this to get all these materials ready. And then there are some updates tonight too that we discussed that you'll submit to us as well. What's our calendar looking like to continue this to?
Your next meeting date is November 16th, followed by December 7th and 14th.
Are they packed?
No,
This is what interest rates do. It is. I mean, everything stopped. It's quite.
Is it realistic to assume we can have everything ready for the 16th? I wouldn't go too strict. If John's group has already responded to the other parts of the September 26th memo, that's a lot of work that's already been done. So it's really on Weston and Sampson. And, I personally wouldn't hold to a strict 1 week before rule on this one at this point. But do you think we can do this for the 16th?
so is that a question to me?
Yes.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
Just if I could ask a point to Attorney Danny, is there another memo that you are referring to that was submitted by you? Okay, so there is
I
one that's
dropped
not.
off two letters. I dropped off the letter to Tom for the board with the memo
Yes,
about.
with the memo,
The other
okay.
one I dropped was a letter to Tom and the board answering everything. I consolidated everything for the Weston and Sampson.
Okay.
That is not the October 4th letter that I see from.
They're both dated the same day, but I'll email
Yeah,
that to you.
all right. So
Okay.
there are actually 3 things submitted and I've seen 2. Okay. All right. Let's shoot for the 16th. And particularly if that's a clear night for our calendar at the moment, it'll be a good night to go through all the issues.
Good.
We have in the past on some projects like this asked the developer. We've invited the developer to submit potential conditions, and I think unless anybody on the board objects, we'll extend that courtesy here as well. But I wouldn't anticipate on the 16th that we're ready to do a decision with all of our conditions, but we might be in a position to close it and be ready to move forward at the following, our next meeting to actually issue the decision. So, but you have an easement to write. You want to conditions, suggested conditions, feel free. And let's find that one missing comment letter and get it to Weston and Sampson and the money to Weston and Sampson.
Good. Absolutely.
All right. All right. Anybody else on the board have any thoughts, comments before we finish this one up for tonight?
This is a site with 21E issues. Where are we with that?
We are actually, we have an LSP. The DEP is actually monitoring it. It's a contaminated site. Not only did we have an LSP, but our finance, our lender actually hired an LSP. I want to make sure that we're abundantly clear. We did not contaminate the site. We're actually buying the site to fix the site, to clean the site, and we're going to adhere to all the regulations from DEP. And that's where we're at right now. We've gone to phase 2. And like I said, I don't believe our LSP is with us tonight because I know we're going to get to it because I know that our response was a part of our response letter. But that's where we stand. I'm like, we're here to clean it up, to be able to put this facility and get rid of that gas station.
But you don't have a specific directive from the state yet of time frame of cleaning it up, how to clean it up. None of that's been decided yet.
Not at this point. We're still in the process after phase 2.
And I think, Kevin, we could probably issue a decision that's conditional on a lot of things happening with respect to that 21E.
Yeah.
That basically nothing will happen until that 21E is resolved, and if the state issues an order to do a massive, scooping out the earth and cleaning it up, getting rid of it, that.
Well, let's just be clear. The state has privatized the environmental issues in the Commonwealth, and that falls on the purview of the licensed site professional to make the professional determination as to how to comply with the Massachusetts contingency plan.
Hmm.
If the state were to audit this privatized program, then the state could do so, and it does do that to a percentage of all its sites. But I think as a board, we have asked for, and we have not heard from the LSP that's been retained by the developer here, by the applicant, to move forward with housing on this site, to move forward with first level commercial use, to move forward with what could be exposure scenarios to the public, to residents, over what is a contaminated site. Duly noted, it's a contaminated site. It's been one, okay? There's no shortage of these types of sites, and they've been dealt with in the past, but we do need to know where this is headed. And to say there's an LSP that's been retained is all we've heard thus far. And we don't know how the LSP plans to close out this site from a 21E perspective, and what mitigation measures will be incorporated to do that.
Okay, that's a point very well taken. And Lauren, I don't know if you know, does Weston and Sampson have any LSP capabilities where they could review something that we received from their LSP if we wanted that to be done?
I'll inquire. They did have a very wide array of specialties when we did our RFP process, which is why we selected them. So I'll ask.
All right,
John, I
so-
thought there was a comment made in the peer review report that
There
referenced.
is. There's a comment, and I know for Kevin's point, he was there at last meeting that we had a full meeting. So he'll be at our next one also.
Yeah, I think he should be there and be prepared. If there's any reports he's issued to you about what he's found on the site, thoughts about mitigation, what might not be done, I think we should have that, and he should be prepared to answer questions. And, you know, again, if we have a wide open agenda next time where we have some time, you know, we can spend some time on that particular issue in some level of detail. I think it's a point very well taken. So,
All right, good.
thank you, Kevin, for bringing that up.
Lauren,
Yes, Lauren.
I just wanted to clarify for you, you do have time. We don't have any new applications and there's no other continuances on the 16th. So we were just going to talk about other planning board matters. We can do that another time. So you can dedicate as much time as you need at the next meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's be prepared, John, to have your full team ready to answer questions. And if there is any LSP report or assessment that he or she has done, let us see that ahead of time so that we can be prepared with some questions.
Good, thank you. Yep, that actually was the response that you'll read, that he would be available to answer your questions.
Okay.
So we'll have him here next time.
Okay. All right. And I have a motion to continue this matter till November 16th at 6:30.
So moved. Second,
Okay. Roll call, Clark,
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Amy Glassmeyer, aye.
Kevin Heine, aye.
Deirdre Hobson, I.
Chris Plex, aye.
All right, great. All right. John, thank you. Cassie, thank you. And your team. Jim,
Ladies, gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll see you on the 16th.
Thank you very much. Have a nice night.
Okay. We have some minutes, I believe, to approve. With the minutes of our, September 28 meeting or 26? I know Angela circulated them the other
It
day.
was
The 28th,
28, all right.
November 28th.
Anybody have any comments, edits to them?
No,
No.
Okay, have a motion to approve them?
motion to approve.
Second,
Second,
All in favor, Clark,
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Glassmeyer, aye.
Kevin Heine, aye.
Deirdre Hobson, I.
Chris Plex, aye.
Okay. I will spare you a lot about the zoning bylaw committee, except that our next forum is next Monday. We will be hearing from Lauren and someone from MAPC on the state housing mandates and statutes we deal with, like 40B, the MBTA mandate, 40R, 40S. Then we will have a presentation from our Affordable Housing Committee regarding the housing plan and how it addresses specifically diversity of housing and multifamilies. And then Woody Chittick from the ZBA is going to be presenting on the accessory dwelling bylaw, both of our existing bylaw, why it's not widely utilized and what we might do to change that. And unlike the last forum, which we broke up Harbor Village, presentations will go one after another, and we will be doing all the Q&A that once again will be moderated by MAPC all at the end of it. So should be a good one. And that will be Monday at 6:30. It's live at the Senior Center. It'll also be on Zoom, and it'll be on 143 TV. I'll just tell you that the bylaw committee, we dealt with a lot of feedback, and we dealt, we've each scrutinized what happened at the first forum and the feedback we got and the issues we have to address going forward. We've also been given some materials by Lauren and Carolyn, and recently today, one of our members, Dave Farag, about linkage and mitigation payments, because that seemed to be a sentiment that came out of the first forum, as well as something we are going to pursue. And we're going forward with our review of bylaw section by section. We'll be taking that up. Our next meeting for the bylaw committee is the 9th, and then we're also meeting the 30th. And we'll continue with, we're moving on a bunch of tracks of getting these forums ready and absorbing the feedback from them, looking at actual bylaw sections and changes of text, and then working on new initiatives, some of which are arising out of these forums. We're still following the game plan that Springtown meeting will be mostly reorganization. It may have some substantive issues that we have to address, and then the fall would probably be the heavy lifting substantive changes. So, Clark, unless there's something you want to add about that committee?
Nope, that's fine.
Anybody else have a subcommittee report? Yeah.
Just a quick question. Sorry, Tom. The Zoom link will be where? Sorry for that.
Where
meeting.
is the Zoom link?
So the Zoom link is going to be in a couple of places. There's a flyer that gets distributed with the link. If you go to the main town website, there should be, this time they're going to make a really obvious button for people, because I know a lot of people couldn't locate it. Also, at any point, if you go to the public meeting calendars, if you go straight to it, I know sometimes it brings you, it just says select board, but all you have to do is scroll down. For some reason, it's not alphabetical and it puts the select board on top when it lists all of the committees, but you can always scroll down, and the public meeting calendar on the front page shows a grid. It typically has like the night of, it shows you right there. We always will post the zoning bylaw committee attending said forum, so you can even post their meeting agenda to get to it.
Thank you.
I think it's
Thank you,
also,
Tom.
I think it's also on the zoning bylaw committee's separate
Website.
page, right?
Okay.
Under its agenda. So, but yeah, if it's made obvious on page 1, I hope that's better, but
Okay,
so
thank you.
I look forward to everybody participating in that. Any other liaison assignments? Is the master plan implementation committee and the Elm Street working group been officially killed by the select board? I shouldn't put it that way.
Hopefully
Sorry,
not.
sorry, selectmen, if you're listening, but go ahead.
So I'll just quickly, that was on my list of things to bring up with you. So the Elm Street Corridor Working Group sunsetted at the end of, I forget what summer month. They came to ultimately a recommendation, but then the grant funding potential that we were hoping was coming through the state budget ultimately just fell through. We weren't allocated that money. It was supposed to really be a governor's bill to sort of like give runner-up funding to allocate a bunch of federal ARPA spending dollars from the state budget to municipalities who had previously applied for grant programs that were like runners-up. So we thought that we were having this earmark coming for $500,000 for the Elm Street Corridor. Ultimately, that bill never passed through the state budget. So that was taken off the table. At this point, there was hesitancy to move forward on picking a consensus as to whether there would be redesign of Elm Street Corridor alone or Elm Street Corridor and a reconfiguration of the intersection. So that there was never a decision point from the decision-making body, is what I'll say. Elm Street Corridor Working Group had their recommendation as to what they would suggest, but ultimately, because this project is not, the paving cycle for our public works paving contract was already set. And Elm Street was not put into the upcoming cycle because at the time, Elm Street Corridor Working Group was still working. And now we know it will be coming up in the following fiscal cycle. At some point, it will come back and there will be a time to make a decision. But right now, it's sort of just been simmering on back burner, to put it nicely. Master Plan Implementation Committee is something that I wanted to bring back up to you. They have also been in a little bit of a recess. We do have a vacancy in a chair position there. There are activities that would fall under master plan umbrella that are still taking place, but the committee is not actively meeting right now. And that's something that I wanted to bring up with this group in one of our upcoming meetings, maybe not in November now, maybe we'll do it in December, but to talk about master plan and maybe how we get the implementation committee back on track, because there are a lot of other projects that could use some direction and engagement from the group. An example that comes to mind is, we have an earmark from state budget for village study. And I know parking is an item that keeps coming up. So we have funds available to bring in, a consultant or someone who's a specialist in this to do this work. It's just a matter of, let's maybe get the committee re-engaged, and if there's turnover or seats available, get the right people plugged in. So that's sort of the conversation I want to have with all of you soon.
Amy, are you still technically on the committee?
I think so. I didn't vacate myself.
No.
I was trying, I wasn't.
No, okay.
I believe in this thing.
And I know we cut down on our liaison assignments, but we don't have anything else to report from liaisons, do we?
I will just report back about affordable housing items. There's a couple of things that are sort of making their way towards almost final stages of certificates of occupancy. 808 Jerusalem Road officially is through their local permitting, and they closed, paperwork's done now. So now Habitat for Humanity, once they've finished their fundraising sort of pyramid that they need to build, you'll start to hear about like public outreach events to raise money for this. So 808 Jerusalem Road is moving forward, and that's really exciting because I know it's been on the town's radar for a long time. We'll have 2 deed-restricted affordable homeownership units with Jerusalem Road addresses in town, which I think is great. And we also have some potential other projects that are currently I'm not able to disclose, but there may be a potential to, bring in some more units. But right now, our pipeline that we've been looking at, that we even know in terms of like permitted projects or some form of construction pipeline, we have about 43, 45 units in the pipeline that would be SHI eligible. So more details to come. I'll circulate also to all of you like the PowerPoint material as background that I've given about affordable housing, and that I'll talk about at the forum on the 7th. But we're sort of like in this gray area of safe harbor. I think we're going to be in a good place, and we are currently projected to be, if this pipeline continues and these construction projects develop as they're intended, we will be making considerable progress on our subsidized housing inventory.
For the 2020 census, which hasn't been finalized yet, correct?
Right.
Yeah. I presume the buildings at Stop and Shop, if he's getting close to his sewer connection, they'll all come online soon. I know he's advertising for his lottery. I presume the hotel projects, they've done their lottery, correct?
Yes, those are units that I'm working actually currently to get on the SHI. It's just a process to confirm with the HCD.
And I heard that the potential friendly 40B next across from the train station entrance is off the table. It was withdrawn.
Correct. Well, it wasn't withdrawn. The select board took the position that given that we are in the midst of a zoning overhaul, taking a look at our comprehensive zoning, that they wanted to put a pause on accepting LIP applications at this time, particularly thinking about how not whether this project moved forward or not, compliance with the MBTA communities doesn't go hand in hand with just developing. It really is what it's zoned for. It's not what's on the ground. So even if you use 40B or a local initiative program, which is like a friendly 40B, to develop something near the train station, that development doesn't inherently count towards MBTA compliance because you haven't changed the zoning of that parcel. So that is sort of like, once I explained that to them, they realized that like no matter what, they would need to find a zoning change solution to do MBTA compliance, and that is not inherently the same as going ahead with this program. So with all of this sort of influx, they took a position that they just want to press pause on accepting these lit programs for, particularly in a residential zoning where it's like a vastly a density change than would be allowed under current zoning.
Lauren is going to explain all of this mess of state stuff on Monday in 10-15 minutes, which is going to be something to see. I'm expecting great things. All right, anything else, Lauren, on your plate?
So the only other things that will be coming up in the month of December now will be additional planning board training. We had last KP Law was here, we were looking at doing it like December, January timeframe. And I think the topic that we'll look to address is refresher on the zoning bylaw amendment process and the public hearing process to town meeting. It'll be, timely to get that refresher before we head into a town meeting cycle. And then in addition, e-permitting is the last update I wanted to give you. We've made considerable progress with our vendor for online electronic permitting for the rollout for planning applications, planning and zoning applications. We're tentatively working towards a soft opening on a couple of our applications. But the really exciting part about this is that it's going to ultimately make like everyone's lives easier, because we'll be able to set you up that you get an automatic email account notification anytime a new application has new information, and it sort of automates the system, and it's publicly accessible. So it's also more like an easily accountability thing, because you see every time it's on the applicant to upload and you can put in comments. It's just sort of a cleaner process system, and it's better for accounting and transparency. So it's coming soon. It's been in progress for years, like literally a couple town planners ago, but we're almost there. So
yeah, I just, when you mentioned that people will be able to comment on it, I just worry about that. I hope they've thought that through with respect to the open meeting law. Yeah.
it's just, it would be assigned commenting. So yeah, I'll clarify more when I explain it, but like I can comment, I can tag like Charlotte Pechtel in conservation and say, can you review? And she can leave a comment on it, as
Oh,
opposed to me like emailing out comment forms like we typically do now in paper and kind of chase around departments getting comments back. We can just automate it, that it's in the system that already also speaks with our building permits right now.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. Any other members have any particular issues, gossip, rumors that they wish to bring up? I did note, by the way, the select board did a live meeting last night in the senior center room. I hope we're all getting to the point where we can figure out going back to live meetings as soon as we can, but that's
on my list to talk to you about this week, Tom. So
Oh, okay.
more to come.
I can't wait. All right.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, I guess they were also on Zoom last night. I think I heard, the little bit I watched on television, I think they took a Zoom comment from somebody. So, I think that it worked fairly smoothly at the first forum. So it is possible to do these hybrids. I understand the biggest problem is location. I guess the good news is we won't have to go back to that miserable meeting room in the basement of town hall ever. If we do hybrids, we'll get some nice fancy rooms someplace. So
We were
all
lucky
right, great.
no one got tuberculosis in that room.
Yeah. You new guys have missed a real treat, but you can go there. And I noticed they were pumping out the basement the other day, so I don't know what happened down there the other day.
Grease, there was grease that was let go of the elevator.
Oh,
They had to get the safe harbor folks in.
oh God, what a mess. But all right, if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:38.
Moved.
Well, you really want to stick around? We can shoot the
Clark,
breeze.
you're usually
Second,
Clark second. All right. Roll call. Clark.
Mark Brewer, aye.
Tom Kelly and I.
You asked my eye.
Kevin Heine, aye.
Deirdre Hobson, I.
Chris Plex, aye.
All right, thank you all. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody
Lauren.
who are out there.
Thanks, everyone.
And
Good night.
we'll see you.
Night.
Hope to see
Night.
you Monday. All right. Bye.